Hello and welcome to Python Fundamentals. In this course, we learn the underpinning Python programming skills, preparing for our journey towards mastering the Django Framework and the Python programming language. This tutorial is part of a series of tutorials. You can find the link to the whole playlist in the video description. This tutorial is from our Python Programming Fundamentals for Django Developers course, which you can find and purchase on Udemy. You will find all the latest and updated tutorials, as well as resources and assessments to help accelerate your learning of the subject. The link to the course, which will always provide the best price, can be found in the video description. Let's now explore the if conditional statement. There are two general sections of the if statement. We have the if keyword and then an expression. And then we have the body of the if statement. And notice, like the for loop, we have to use indentations to tell the Python interpreter that the following code is part of the if statement. As soon as we then move back to the start of a line, that then indicates the next line of the code in our program that's not related to the if statement. What we're trying to do here is compare values. Once we've compared values, we then get an outcome. And based upon that outcome will depend on what the Python does next. So here we have if, and then we're going to have something called an expression. So we're going to evaluate that expression. The outcome of that expression is that we return true or false. If we return true, that tells Python then to run the code in the body of our if statement. If, for example, this expression that we generate returns false, that tells Python do not run the statements inside of our if statement. That really is the basics of a if statement. What we need to learn a little bit more about is the expression. What is the expression? What can we do in the expression? How do we build an expression? The statement here is just referring to code that we want to run. If, for example, we return true from the expression. So to recap, this if statement, our conditional statement, starts with an expression. We evaluate the expression and the outcome of it will be one of two results, true or false. If we return true, then we run this statement or statements or code inside the if statement block here. They have to be indented to indicate to Python that it's part of the if statement. Now, if this expression returns false, then we just continue. Python will just move down to the next line that isn't indented and read the code. Once we have actually executed the statements inside of our if statement, once it's all executed, Python will just continue on the next line of code, which is part of the application. So now we've got the basics in place. Let's just see some examples. So back in my example where we left off from the previous example, looking at for loops, let's go ahead and now build an if statement. So we have this if keyword, and then we need some sort of expression. Now we'll explain in the next tutorial something called logical conditions, because we need to understand them in order to make our comparisons. But let's stick with something basic for now and just say true. We know that if this expression returns true, and it is because it's just true, then we're going to return something. So let's just go ahead and print, let's just print true, okay? Else, we're just going to print false. We'll print false. Okay. So let's go ahead and run this python3.example, and you can see it returns true and false, okay? Because this expression return true because we're just passing in true. So it's not really doing anything. It has to return true because we're just passing the Boolean true at this point. Okay, so we're not really performing any comparisons here. But just to show you an example. So we print off true because this is true. And then what happens, like I said in the example previously, Python would then continue to read the code. And because this print isn't indented, that's the next line of our code in our application, and therefore runs the print false. Okay, so we try to turn this into false here. Then what's going to happen now is this would return false. Remember, if we return false, then we don't run this code in the block. We just continue. So it will just return false in this case. So let's move on to the next tutorial where we learn about logical conditions. So here we need to understand the characters that we use or the symbols that we use to actually build these different comparisons. So for example, the double equals. So here we're comparing two values, the 1 and the 1. Does 1 equal 1? So the outcome is going to be true or false. In this case, it's true because 1 does equal 1. So let's try this. And it will print out the true because this is true. And then it prints out the false, obviously, because we finished this line, and then Python then moves on to the next lines.